A silent desert holds the bones of magnificent cities that should not exist. These vanished metropolises, thriving against impossible odds, force us to rewrite the history books. By the end of this journey, you will understand how ancient civilizations conquered the harshest environments on Earth, only to disappear without a trace. We will explore how they found water where there was none and built empires of sand and stone, what finally caused their spectacular collapse, and could such a fate ever await our own world? What forgotten story would you most want the desert to tell? That silent, sandy embrace hides a deeper truth about ourselves. We are drawn to these ghostly metropolises not merely for their ruins, but for the audacious human spirit they represent. To build a city in the desert is an act of supreme defiance. It is a declaration that life will not be confined to the easy, the green, the hospitable. This is the core of their allure, the reason these empty places feel so full of meaning. They are monuments to a universal human drive, the need to push against boundaries and make the impossible real. Think of the sheer will it took to envision a thriving port in the heart of a sand sea, or a trading hub where the only natural resource was relentless sun. These were not just settlements, they were statements carved in stone, a testament to the power of a collective dream. Every crumbling wall whispers a question that resonates across the centuries. What does it take for a community to not just survive, but to flourish in a land that seems to actively reject it? The answer forces us to reconsider the very foundations of civilization. We often think of great cultures rising in fertile river valleys, cradled by nature's bounty, but these desert kingdoms tell a different story, one of ingenuity triumphing over geography. They challenge our assumptions about where life can take root and what a society truly needs to prosper. By studying their success, we learn a profound lesson about the delicate balance between human ambition and the natural world. Their eventual silence, then, is not a story of failure, but a cautionary tale about the fragility of even our grandest creations. The sand that now buries their streets asks us what legacies we are building today, and whether they too might one day become a puzzle for a future generation to solve. These grand cities were not just built in a desert, they were built in spite of it. To label them impossible is not poetic exaggeration. It is a factual description of the immense obstacles they overcame. A permanent, large-scale human settlement has three non-negotiable requirements. It needs a consistent and abundant source of fresh water. It needs enough fertile land to grow food for its entire population. And it needs a climate that is not actively hostile to life. A true desert offers none of these things. It is a landscape of scarcity, designed to withhold the very resources civilization needs to breathe. So when we speak of a vanished desert metropolis, we are not talking about a small oasis village clinging to a single spring. We are talking about a city of thousands, with monumental architecture, organized governments, bustling marketplaces, and complex trade networks. These were places of wealth and culture that prospered for generations. The sheer scale of their existence creates a fascinating puzzle. How did they secure enough water, not just for drinking, but for agriculture, for industry, for bathing, for fountains? How did they feed a dense urban population when the surrounding land was barren rock and sand? Where did they find the timber for roofs or the stone for their walls? The impossibility lies in this sustained abundance in a place of perpetual deficit. Their enduring success forces us to look beyond our basic assumptions. It suggests they mastered their environment in ways we are only beginning to comprehend, turning the desert's greatest threats into the foundations of their power. Petra's story begins not with grand construction, but with a profound understanding of emptiness. The Nabateans chose this secluded canyon not in spite of its isolation, but because of it. In a vast and open desert, a narrow, easily defended gorge was the ultimate strategic asset. They transformed a geographical bottleneck into the world's most magnificent tollgate. Every spice caravan, every merchant laden with incense and silk, was funneled through this stone corridor, and the Nabateans ensured a price was paid for that passage. The breathtaking tombs and temples we admire today were literally funded by the desert's trade winds. But to make a city live here, they had to solve the desert's oldest and most dangerous riddle: water. Where others saw only barren rock, the Nabateans saw a catchment system. They did not just find water, they designed an entire landscape to harvest it. They studied the canyon's geology with the precision of modern engineers, carving channels to guide torrential seasonal floods into a network of massive cisterns. They lined these reservoirs with a special waterproof plaster, preventing the precious liquid from seeping back into the thirsty earth. This was not mere survival, it was hydrological mastery. Their system could collect and store millions of gallons, turning catastrophic flash floods into a predictable, life-giving resource. Can you envision the confidence it took to build a metropolis in a desert wadi, a dry riverbed, and then calmly engineer a solution to control the very floods that would have wiped a lesser city away? This ingenuity allowed Petra to become an oasis of staggering scale, supporting not just thousands of people, but also lush gardens and public baths, all in the heart of a sun-scorched canyon. The city's wealth is etched into the cliff walls themselves. The famous treasury, with its ornate classical columns and statues, is a declaration of cosmopolitan power. This was no remote outpost, it was a global crossroads, its architects and artisans influenced by trade contacts from Greece to Egypt. The Nabateans carved their identity directly from the living rock, creating a capital that was both a fortress and a work of art, a city that seemed to grow naturally from the stone itself. Yet this mastery contained the seeds of its own vulnerability. Petra's entire existence was tied to the flow of commerce. When trade routes later shifted to sea lanes and other land paths, the lifeblood of the city slowly drained away. The magnificent water system, with no one left to maintain it, eventually silted up and fell into disrepair. The very isolation that once protected Petra now sealed its fate, as it faded from a bustling metropolis into a legend whispered among Bedouin tribes. For centuries, the Western world believed it was a myth, a lost city of dreams, until a daring Swiss explorer disguised as a pilgrim walked through the narrow canyon slit in 1812 and saw the rose-red facade glowing in the sun. Petra's silence today is a powerful reminder that no civilization, no matter how brilliantly it adapts to its environment, is immune to the changing currents of the world. The Nabateans did not wait for rain, they captured it. In a land that received a mere 6 inches of water each year, they engineered a system to command every drop. Their strategy was comprehensive, treating the entire canyon as a single, intricate catchment device. When rare but violent storms lashed the highlands, water would pour into the dry riverbeds or wadis, threatening to destroy anything in its path. The Nabateans did not see this as a threat, but as their main water supply arriving all at once. They built massive stone dams to divert these powerful flash floods, channeling the raging torrents into a carefully planned network of canals and tunnels carved directly into the cliff faces. From there, the water flowed through expertly laid terracotta pipes, descending through the city to meet its needs, but their true genius lay in storage. They carved vast, bell-shaped cisterns deep into the solid rock, hidden from the evaporating sun. These underground reservoirs were lined with a special, impermeable plaster, ensuring that not a single drop was lost to the porous stone. Combined, they could hold millions of gallons, a strategic reserve that could sustain the city through years of drought. This was not just plumbing, it was a civic lifeline. This secured water supply did more than quench thirst. It allowed for the unthinkable, small-scale agriculture within the city walls. Gardens and even pools became symbols of a power so complete they had tamed the desert itself. The system's sophistication is humbling, a network of dams, pipes, and reservoirs that would be a proud achievement for any modern municipal government. It stands as ultimate proof that the most powerful human resource is not water, but ingenuity. This same relentless drive to overcome scarcity appears again and again in deserts thousands of miles away, where another civilization performed an equally impossible feat. While the Nabateans mastered water, another desert civilization was consumed by the very ground beneath its feet. The Legend of Ubar, the Atlantis of the Sands, is a story spun from equal parts gold and sin. For over a millennium, it existed only in whispers, a fabulously wealthy city of incense traders mentioned in the Quran and the tales of 1001 Nights. It was said to be a place of towering pillars and vast treasure, built directly over a colossal cavern. According to the law, the people of Ubar grew arrogant and corrupt, and as divine punishment, their entire city was swallowed by the desert sands, vanishing without a trace. It was the ultimate cautionary tale, a myth meant to warn against hubris and greed. Most scholars dismissed it as pure fiction, a beautiful story with no basis in fact. But then, in the early 1990s, something incredible happened. A team of researchers, combining clues from ancient manuscripts with startling new satellite images, pinpointed a potential location in the desolate emptiness of Oman's Rub al-Khali Desert, the Empty Quarter. What they found there was not a city of gold, but something far more compelling. The site, known today as Shisar, revealed the ruins of a fortified settlement centered around a massive sinkhole. The evidence on the ground told a story that eerily mirrored the ancient legend. This was not a city punished by gods, but one that fell victim to its own geography. The cavern beneath Ubar was likely not a treasure vault, but a natural limestone cavity, its ceiling weakened by the very water the city relied upon. One day, the ground simply gave way, collapsing parts of the fortress into the earth. Can you fathom the terror of that moment, the world literally opening up to consume a community? This single catastrophic event, witnessed by surviving traders, would have been retold around countless campfires. With each telling, the real tragedy was woven into something more epic, a moral fable about a people whose sins were so great the earth itself rejected them. The discovery of Ubar does more than just locate a lost city. It illuminates the very process of how history becomes legend. It proves that our most enduring myths are often not pure inventions, but memories of real human dramas, distorted and amplified by time until they achieve a power far beyond their origins. The sands did not swallow Ubar out of anger, but the story of that swallowing has echoed for centuries, a haunting reminder of how quickly our greatest achievements can turn to dust and story. The true wealth of these desert cities was not buried in the ground, but passed through their gates on the backs of camels. Their lifeblood was commerce. Cities like Petra and Palmyra were not built on what they possessed, but on where they stood, acting as vital way stations on the superhighways of the ancient world. They controlled the flow of incredibly valuable goods, most famously frankincense and myrrh, aromatic resins harvested from trees that grew only in the far south of Arabia. These substances were not mere luxuries. In the ancient world they were necessities, burned in vast quantities in the temples of Egypt, Rome, and Persia, and used in medicines and burial rites. The Desert Metropolises positioned themselves as the sole guarantors of safe passage for the massive caravans carrying this precious cargo. They provided the three things every caravan master desperately needed: security from desert raiders, reliable sources of water in an unforgiving landscape, and a bustling market to trade and resupply. For this service, they exacted a heavy price in taxes and tariffs, amassing fortunes not from their own land, but from the movement of others. This constant flow of people and products transformed these isolated oases into cosmopolitan hubs. A merchant in Palmyra would have heard a dozen different languages in the marketplace, seen goods from India and China, and encountered ideas from Greece and Persia. The staggering architecture we see in ruins today, the grand colonnaded streets, the towering tombs, the ornate temples, were all funded by this river of trade. It paid for the water systems, the public baths, the theaters, creating a standard of living that defied the harsh surroundings. But this glorious existence came with a profound fragility. A city built on trade is a city built on a foundation of shifting sand. Its entire economy was hostage to geography and politics. When the Roman Empire began to favor sea routes for transporting eastern goods, the lifeblood of these caravan cities slowly drained away. A new political rival blocking a route or a cheaper means of transport discovered elsewhere could spell doom as surely as any drought. Their magnificent stone walls could not protect them from the invisible currents of global commerce. The sand that reclaimed their streets is a stark testament to a universal truth: that the same forces that build a world can just as easily abandon it, leaving only echoes in the wind. Yet even the most brilliant trade network cannot shield a city from the ambitions of its rulers. In the heart of the Syrian desert, the ruins of Palmyra tell a story of breathtaking ascent and a devastating fall, a narrative forever tied to the legend of its warrior queen. This was not merely a caravan stop, it was a deliberate masterpiece of cultural fusion. Walking its grand colonnaded avenue, a traveler would see Greco-Roman columns standing beside intricate Persian motifs and sculptures honoring local Semitic deities. Its vast temple to the god Bel was one of the ancient world's great religious centers, a place where Babylonian, Greek, and Roman traditions met and merged. Palmyra did not just broker goods between empires, it synthesized their very souls, creating a unique and powerful identity from the crossroads of the world. This confident hybrid culture reached its zenith under Queen Zenobia. She was a figure of immense intellect and staggering ambition, a ruler who saw Rome's momentary weakness and dared to seize her own empire. Under her command, Palmyran armies marched into Egypt and deep into Anatolia, shaking the foundations of Roman power in the east. For a brief, glorious moment, Zenobia was not a client queen but an empress, and Palmyra was the capital of a rival superpower. Can you envision the audacity it took to challenge the might of Rome from an oasis in the desert? But empires do not take such challenges lightly. Emperor Aurelian marched east, crushed the Palmyran army, and brought Zenobia back to Rome in golden chains. The city was sacked, its spirit broken. The trade that had been its lifeblood slowly drifted to safer routes, and the sands began their patient reclamation. This ancient tragedy found a terrible echo in our own time, when modern conflict brought new destruction to its ancient temples and tombs. This double loss across centuries makes Palmyra a uniquely powerful symbol. It is a monument to the beauty that can arise when cultures intertwine, and a stark warning of how quickly that beauty can be shattered by conflict and pride. The story of Palmyra asks us what we are willing to lose when the dream of power overshadows the power of a dream. Stone and ambition merged in these desert cities, creating monuments that seem to defy the very logic of their surroundings. The architectural marvels we find there are not just beautiful, they are testaments to a deep, practical intelligence. Without vast forests for timber or easy access to imported marble, builders turned to the only materials they had in abundance, the earth itself. They became masters of sandstone and limestone, cutting and shaping the bones of the desert. They perfected mud brick, a humble material that, when used with skill, could rise into formidable walls and soaring towers. But their resourcefulness went far beyond simple material choice. In Petra, the Nabateans did not build their structures, they revealed them. They carved the famous treasury and the monastery directly from the cliff faces, a subtractive process of incredible precision. Imagine the confidence of an architect who looks at a solid mountain and sees a palace waiting inside, knowing that a single miscalculation with a chisel could ruin the entire vision. This was architecture as sculpture on a colossal scale, a permanent fusion of human art and natural geology. Far to the west, in the heart of the Sahara, the Garamantes civilization faced a different challenge: water. Their genius was not carved in towering facades, but hidden deep underground. They constructed vast networks of tunnels known as fagara. These were not simple wells, but gently sloping subterranean canals that tapped into fossil water trapped deep beneath the desert. They dug vertical shafts at intervals, creating a chain of access points that allowed for maintenance and ventilation, a grid of life invisible from the surface. This system channeled water for miles to their fields and settlements, turning parts of the Sahara green. The design of the cities themselves was a direct response to the climate. Thick mud brick walls provided natural insulation, keeping interiors cool under the blistering sun and warm during cold desert nights. In Persia, wind-catching towers or badgers were engineered to funnel even the slightest breeze down into living spaces, creating a natural and efficient form of air conditioning. Water channels were not tucked away as utilities. They were integrated into the design of streets and courtyards, serving both practical needs and aesthetic pleasure. This was not mere construction, it was a profound form of environmental symbiosis. Every structure was designed to work with the desert, not against it, to harness its scant resources and mitigate its harshest effects. The grandeur of their temples and the scale of their theaters were therefore more than just displays of wealth. They were declarations of permanence. They were a civilization's way of looking into the vast, empty face of the desert and stating, unequivocally, we are here to stay. Deep in the heart of the Libyan desert, a kingdom rose that defies every expectation. The Garamantes were not the simple nomads of popular imagination, but the masters of a veritable empire, a sophisticated urban society that held sway over the Sahara for more than 1,000 years. Their capital, Garama, was a city of substance, centered around a multi-story palace that spoke of a complex social hierarchy and a powerful, centralized authority. They possessed their own written language, developed a unique culture, and commanded trade routes that stretched across the vast desert. But their most astonishing feat was hidden from the sun, a labyrinthine network of tunnels known as fagara. These were not mere ditches, but engineering marvels that tapped into ancient fossil water, reserves that had been trapped deep underground for millennia. Think of the insight required to locate this hidden sea beneath the sand, and the generations of labor needed to construct tunnels that stretched for hundreds of miles, bringing life to the surface. Vertical shafts were dug at regular intervals, not only for construction but for maintenance, creating a hidden grid of life that turned hyper-arid valleys into fields of wheat, barley, and dates. The Garamantes did not just find an oasis, they manufactured one on an imperial scale. This command over water allowed them to become a major regional power, one that even the mighty Roman Empire had to contend with, launching campaigns into the desert in attempts to subdue them. Yet this very triumph contained the seed of their demise. The fossil water they relied upon was a finite resource, like a bank account with no deposits. After centuries of drought, the wells began to run dry. The Fragility systems silted up, the fields turned to dust, and the green patches of the Sahara slowly vanished. Their story is a profound lesson in sustainability. The Garamantes did not fall to a foreign invader, but to a slowly tightening ecological noose of their own making. Their civilization challenges the very idea of the Sahara as an empty, ahistorical void, forcing us to see it instead as a cradle of a brilliant and advanced African culture, one whose silence today speaks volumes about the limits of even the most ingenious human enterprise. The success of a desert civilization was a race against its own thirst. Every drop of water was a victory, and every well was a potential battleground against the relentless sun. For empires like the Garamantes, their greatest treasure was not gold but a ghost. They survived by tapping into fossil water, ancient aquifers that had been sealed underground for thousands of years, from a time when the Sahara was a green and rainy land. This was not a renewable spring, but a one-time inheritance, a vast but finite savings account with no way to make a deposit. To access it, they engineered one of the ancient world's most demanding projects, the Fragility tunnels. Imagine the grueling labor of digging these subterranean canals, often by forced labor, for mile after mile. Each tunnel had to be sloped with perfect precision, just enough for water to flow slowly to the surface by gravity alone. Every so often, a vertical shaft was dug down to the tunnel, both for removing debris and for providing air to the workers below. The result was a hidden grid of life, an invisible river flowing beneath the burning sand that turned the desert floor into a carpet of green. This was a triumph of human will, but it was a triumph with a timer attached. They were literally living on borrowed time and on borrowed water. When the fossil aquifers were finally depleted after centuries of drought, the entire system collapsed. The tunnels silted up, the fields withered, and the empire that had mastered the desert was ultimately mastered by it. This same precarious dance with water defined every desert metropolis. Some, like Petra, became masters of the flash flood, capturing violent seasonal rains in a network of cisterns. Others diverted distant rivers through canals that stretched to the horizon. In every case, the management of this precarious supply was the city's highest priority. It dictated how many people could live within the walls, how much food could be grown, and how long the city's golden age could possibly last. The haunting silence we find in these ruins today is more than anything else the sound of water running out. It is the ghost of a spent resource, a stark reminder that the most brilliant civilization is built on a foundation that can, quite literally, dry up and blow away. The most formidable enemy these cities ever faced left no ruins and wielded no sword. It was the slow, inexorable shift of the climate itself. While political strife and shifting trade routes delivered critical blows, the deeper, more insidious cause of collapse was often a creeping dryness that settled over the land for generations. This was not a dramatic, single-year drought, but a fundamental reordering of the world's weather patterns, a process we now call desertification. Across the Middle East and North Africa, around the time many of these great metropolises faltered, the rains became less reliable. The margins of the desert, lands that were once just productive enough for grazing or marginal farming, slowly turned to barren dust. What did this mean for a city carved from a canyon or built around an oasis? It meant that the underground aquifers, the fossil water that civilizations like the Garamantes depended upon, began to drop beyond the reach of their deepest wells. It meant that the seasonal floods that Petra's brilliant system was designed to capture became weaker, less frequent, or stopped altogether. The sand dunes, once held at bay by a fragile crust of soil and scrub, began to advance, silently burying fields and then the outskirts of the cities themselves. Can you envision the slow dread of watching your world dry up year by year? A farmer would notice his harvests growing thinner. A city administrator would see the water levels in the public cisterns falling, season after season, with no hope of replenishment. This was a crisis that unfolded too slowly for any single generation to declare an emergency, yet its cumulative effect was absolute. The agricultural base that fed thousands of people withered. The water security that allowed for public baths and gardens evaporated. Societies that had been brilliantly engineered for a specific environmental reality found their foundation crumbling away. They were not destroyed in a fiery conquest, but gradually strangled, their resilience worn down by a force they could neither fight nor flee. The silence of these places today is the echo of that long, slow retreat, a sobering reminder that the environment is not merely a backdrop for human history, but an active, powerful participant. The fate of these vanished metropolises asks us a difficult question about our own world, a question that hangs in the air as surely as the desert dust. The grand colonnades of Palmyra were not just avenues of stone, they were corridors of conversation between entire worlds. A merchant from Rome could walk past a temple dedicated to a Mesopotamian deity, its entrance flanked by statues carved in a style that blended Greek realism with Eastern symbolism. In the marketplace, he might hear the laws of the city proclaimed in both Aramaic and Greek, a legal duality that reflected its hybrid soul. This was the profound reality of the desert crossroads, places where cultures did not merely pass by each other, but paused, interacted, and intertwined. The artistic genius of these cities lies in this beautiful synthesis. Look at the famous funerary portraits from Palmyra, where local men and women are depicted in Roman dress and hairstyles, yet their solemn, frontal poses and large, expressive eyes speak to an artistic tradition rooted in the ancient Near East. It is a face composed of two different worlds, looking out at us as a single, confident individual. In Petra, the Nabateans worshipped their primary god, Dashara, but they often represented him in the form of a classical-style block of stone or B-tile, placing him in a temple that echoed Hellenistic architectural orders. Their chief goddess, Al-Azza, was seamlessly equated with the Greek Aphrodite and the Egyptian Isis. This was not a surrender of identity, but a confident absorption of foreign concepts, reframing them within a local context to create something new and uniquely their own. This fusion extended far beyond the visual. New technologies in water management, metallurgy, and astronomy traveled along these trade routes, adopted and improved upon by each culture they touched. Religious ideas flowed just as freely, with concepts of the afterlife, divine intermediaries, and ritual practice blending to create new spiritual pathways. These cities thrived because they were open systems, intellectually and culturally. Their power was born from an ability to look outward, to take the best of what the world offered and weave it into the fabric of their own society. Their ruins stand as a powerful, silent argument against the myth of cultural purity, reminding us that the most vibrant and resilient civilizations are those that are not afraid to embrace the world. Sometimes the most enduring desert metropolis is one that was never there at all. Decades after the great ruins of Petra and Palmyra were confirmed to the world, a new and tantalizing mystery surfaced in the vastness of the Kalahari. In 1885, a showman and adventurer named Guillermo Farini returned from southern Africa with an incredible claim. He said he had found the ruins of a massive, ancient city, a place of immense stone blocks and curious monuments, half buried in the red sand of one of the world's most formidable deserts. His published account captured the public imagination, describing walls laid out in perfect arcs and strange, weathered carvings. It was a story perfectly tailored for an era hungry for lost worlds and undiscovered civilizations. Expeditions were mounted, fueled by Farini's detailed descriptions and his own hand-drawn maps. Yet every subsequent search returned empty-handed. No grand walls were ever photographed, no monuments were ever carted back to a museum. The scientific community quickly dismissed the lost city of the Kalahari as a mirage, a deliberate hoax, or perhaps just a traveler's honest mistake, misinterpreting the wind-sculpted, table-like rock formations known as kopjes that dot the desert landscape. But if it was a simple error, why has the legend refused to die? The answer lies not in the sand, but in us. The story taps into a deep and persistent human longing, the desire for there to be one more great secret waiting in the empty spaces of the map. This is amplified by the Kalahari itself, an immense sea of sand and scrub so vast that it could, in theory, hide almost anything. Indigenous stories from the region sometimes speak of ancient places, adding a layer of local belief that fuels the modern myth. The lost city is no longer just a physical location. It has become a psychological artifact. It represents the final frontier of desert exploration, the idea that even in our age of satellites and satellite imagery, there might still be one last great discovery lurking just beyond the dune's crest. The true power of this vanished city is that it can never be found, for its existence depends entirely on our need for it to be out there, a permanent monument to wonder in a world that feels increasingly known. A city swallowed by the sands for its sins is far more compelling than one abandoned after a well ran dry. The legends that grow around these places are not mere decoration, they are the engine of discovery itself. For centuries, the only maps that led to lost cities were drawn in the ink of story and song. Tales of cursed wealth and divine retribution did more than just warn. They created an irresistible lure, a puzzle that begged to be solved by adventurers and scholars. These narratives are rarely pure fiction. They are often the echo of a real, catastrophic event, distorted and amplified by time. A major earthquake becomes the hammer of an angry god. A slow decline due to drought is remembered as a sudden, moral punishment. A military defeat transforms into a legend of a glorious, final stand. The facts provide the seed, but human imagination provides the fertile ground for a mighty myth to grow. The story of Ubar stands as the ultimate testament to this process. For over a millennium, it was a cautionary fable, a city of pillar dwellers destroyed for their arrogance. Scholars dismissed it as religious allegory until a team used those very ancient descriptions, combined with satellite imagery, to find a real fortress that had collapsed into a sinkhole. The legend was true not in its divine details, but in its core memory of a sudden, catastrophic collapse. The myth motivated the search, and the search, in turn, reinterpreted the myth, replacing supernatural wrath with geological tragedy. This cycle is fundamental to how we recover the past. The grand, moralizing stories ensure that the memory of a place survives long after its last stone has fallen, preserving its name and its location in the collective imagination until someone is equipped to listen. The history of these metropolises is therefore a dual record, written both in the stratigraphy of an archaeological dig and in the plot of a campfire tale. To understand them fully, we must read both texts, for one tells us what happened and the other reveals what it meant. The legends that guided explorers for centuries have now been supercharged by technology. We have moved from deciphering ancient poems to analyzing pixels from space. The 21st century search for lost cities is a silent revolution, conducted from orbit and with lasers. Satellite photography provides the first crucial clues, revealing the ghostly fingerprints of human settlement. From hundreds of miles above the Earth, specialized cameras can detect subtle discolorations in the soil, known as crop marks. These variations in color and growth occur because buried stone walls inhibit root growth, while ancient storage pits filled with rich organic matter promote it. What looks like uniform desert or farmland from the ground becomes a detailed schematic from space, hinting at the outlines of temples, houses, and streets hidden just beneath the surface. This is how the long-lost city of Ubar was initially pinpointed, its faint trackways visible only from the sky. But what about landscapes where even the soil is hidden? That is where LiDAR enters the story. The name stands for light detection and ranging. Think of it as a form of high-tech echolocation. An aircraft flies over a target area, firing hundreds of thousands of laser pulses per second toward the ground. These pulses bounce back, and by measuring their return time, a computer can construct an exquisitely detailed, three-dimensional map of the surface, digitally stripping away obstructions like trees or scrub. In the desert, LiDAR is being adapted to find microtopography, the faintest bumps and depressions that are completely invisible to a person walking over them, revealing the foundations of a forgotten fortress or the sunken path of a caravan route. For the final confirmation, there is ground-penetrating radar. This device is slowly dragged across the sand, sending radio waves into the earth. When these waves hit a buried wall or a hollow chamber, they bounce back, creating a sonogram of the underworld. It allows archaeologists to literally see through the sand, mapping entire city plans without ever lifting a shovel. This suite of tools has transformed archaeology from a slow, laborious process of digging trial trenches into a precise surgical science. Researchers can now survey vast areas in days, not decades, preserving the integrity of sites by only excavating where the technology tells them something extraordinary awaits. We are at the dawn of a new golden age of discovery, where the next great lost metropolis may not be found by a lone adventurer, but by a scientist analyzing a data stream, revealing another impossible city waiting patiently beneath the dunes. No single storm felled these desert giants. Their end was a slow unraveling, a series of threads pulled until the entire tapestry came apart. The changing climate set the stage, a creeping dryness that stressed the very foundations of life. But the final act of abandonment was almost always a complex tragedy with multiple characters. For some, the final blow was delivered by an external enemy. The story of Palmyra is the most stark example, a city brought to its knees by the military might of Rome, its trade routes severed and its political power shattered in a single, decisive war. For others, the end came from within the earth itself. Petra, already struggling as trade shifted to sea routes, may have been dealt a critical blow by a massive earthquake, a tremor that shattered the intricate water channels that were the city's lifeline. The genius that once captured flash floods was now buried under collapsed rock, a disaster from which there was no recovery, and for civilizations like the Garamantes, the end was a quiet, internal exhaustion. They did not fall to a sword, but to a sinking water table, the slow, inevitable depletion of the ancient fossil aquifers that had fueled their empire for 1,000 years. Their collapse was a bankruptcy of their most precious resource. Imagine a society already weakened by drought, its granaries half empty. Then a pandemic sweeps through its crowded streets, or a bitter internal conflict fractures its social unity. Any one of these shocks might have been survivable for a healthy society, but for a civilization already on the edge, it becomes the final, unbearable weight. There is rarely a single smoking gun in the archaeological record. Instead, we find evidence of a cascade where failures in one system amplify the weaknesses in another. A broken trade network means no money to repair the water system. A broken water system means famine, which leads to social unrest, which makes the city vulnerable to an attack it could have once repelled. This is why their stories are not just historical curiosities. They are case studies in resilience. By understanding how these complex societies fractured, we can begin to identify the warning signs in our own interconnected world. What happens when our own complex systems, from global supply chains to digital networks, face a cascading failure? The silence of the desert holds a sobering lesson about the fragility of even the most brilliant human achievements. That same dream of rediscovery that drives archaeologists has also fueled a far more destructive pursuit. For as long as there have been stories of gold hidden beneath the sand, there have been treasure hunters willing to tear the past apart to find it. This is the dark shadow of our fascination with lost cities, a relentless looting that has erased more history than it has ever unearthed. A treasure hunter sees a tomb as a vault to be cracked open, its contents to be hauled away and sold to the highest bidder. But to an archaeologist, the true value is not in the object itself, but in its story. A golden amulet is a beautiful trinket on its own, but its meaning is unlocked only by its context, where it was found, in what layer of soil, next to what other objects, and positioned in relation to a skeleton. This context is the language of history, and looting is the act of burning the dictionary. It turns a potential chapter in the story of humanity into a handful of scattered words, beautiful but ultimately meaningless on the black market. The problem is not confined to the past. In times of modern conflict, when governments fall and chaos reigns, these unprotected sites become free for all. Organized gangs, sometimes funding insurgencies with the profits, descend with bulldozers and metal detectors, reducing ancient city blocks to rubble in their frantic search for saleable artifacts. This creates an impossible ethical challenge. How do you protect a sprawling, remote desert metropolis with a handful of guards? How do you stop the flow of looted goods into a global market where wealthy, private collectors turn a blind eye to an object's tragic origins? The fight to save these places is a quiet, ongoing war. It pits local heritage officials and underfunded archaeologists against sophisticated smuggling networks. Their tools are not just shovels and brushes, but satellite monitoring to detect fresh digging, community outreach to turn local populations into guardians of their own heritage, and international treaties designed to choke the market. Every pochard left in place, every wall left unbreached, is a victory. It means that when proper scientific excavation finally begins, the story of that city, of its people and their daily lives, can be told in full. The silence of a looted ruin is a different kind of silence, one not of nature's reclamation, but of human greed. It is the sound of a question being asked and the answer being destroyed before we can ever hear it. Even the stones themselves are engaged in a slow surrender to the desert. While looters steal artifacts in a single night, the sun and wind wage a patient, centuries-long war of attrition against these monuments. The same environment that gave these cities their strategic purpose now works tirelessly to erase them. Wind is a constant sculptor, but its art is destruction. Endless streams of fine, abrasive sand act like a natural sandblaster, slowly wearing away the intricate details of a carved frieze or the sharp edge of an inscription. Over decades, a face becomes a smooth, featureless curve, and a written law becomes an illegible groove in the wall. Then there is the tyranny of temperature. A desert day can be scorching, the stone expanding under a brutal sun, only for the night to bring a deep, penetrating cold that makes the same stone contract. This daily cycle of expansion and contraction creates microscopic fractures, a relentless stress that slowly forces the stone to powder from the inside out. The most ironic threat comes from the very resource these cities mastered, water. When a rare, heavy rain falls, it is not a blessing for the ruins. Water seeps into newly formed cracks, and when it freezes, it expands with immense force, prying the stone apart. A sudden downpour can trigger a flash flood, just as it did in the days of the Nabateans, but now with no maintained channels to guide it. The torrent slams into ancient foundations, washing away the very ground they stand on. The work of modern conservators is therefore a profound and delicate battle. It is a fight against physics itself. Specialists use lasers to clean surfaces without touching the fragile stone. They inject chemical consolidants that act like a gentle glue, seeping into the porous rock to bind its crumbling matrix back together. Over critically important areas, like a temple with faded but priceless murals, they might build a protective shelter, not to reconstruct, but to simply shield the original work from the elements. This effort extends to managing the footsteps of admirers. In Petra, the constant tread of thousands of visitors each day wears down the very stone pathways and staircases they came to see. Solutions must be creative, from building alternative viewing platforms to restricting access to the most fragile tombs. This is a race against a clock measured in geological time, a desperate attempt to slow a natural process that is as inevitable as the sunrise. We are not trying to rebuild these cities, but to preserve their beautiful, fading echo for as long as possible, to ensure that the question they pose to the future remains visible, a silent challenge carved in weathering stone. Their crumbling walls speak a language we are only now learning to fluently understand, the grammar of sustainability. These cities are not just archaeological wonders, they are profound case studies in survival. Their greatest lesson is a simple, brutal equation. A civilization built on a finite resource is living on borrowed time. For the Garamantes, that resource was fossil water, a one-time gift from a wetter age. For Petra and Palmyra, it was the flow of trade, a river of wealth that could and did change its course. Their brilliant innovations, from the Fagara tunnels to the cliff-carved cisterns, were triumphs of adaptation, proving that human ingenuity can create abundance from scarcity. But their ultimate silence reveals the peril of mistaking that temporary abundance for permanent conquest. They show us the danger of pushing an ecosystem or an economic model beyond its natural carrying capacity. Think of it like a brilliant performer on a tightrope. For centuries, these civilizations walked that rope with breathtaking skill, balancing their needs against the desert's harsh realities. But when the rope itself began to fray, whether from a changing climate or a shifting global economy, even the most perfect balance could not prevent the fall. In our own era of climate change and resource anxiety, their stories are not ancient history. They are a warning written in sand and stone. We face our own versions of fossil aquifers, whether they are stores of fresh water, reserves of cheap energy, or the stability of a global climate system we have long taken for granted. The prosperity of these desert kingdoms was not measured in the height of their towers, but in the depth of their understanding. They thrived when they listened to the land, when they designed their lives around the rhythms of the desert, not against them. Their failure came when that delicate symbiosis was broken, when the balance tipped from partnership to dominance. The haunting beauty of their ruins today is a monument to that lost equilibrium. It asks us a direct and urgent question as we shape our own modern world. Are we building with the wisdom of the Nabatean water engineer, or are we merely digging another Fagara, destined to run dry? Something profound stirs within us when we stand before a silent city. This pull is more than simple curiosity. It is a deep psychological resonance with these ghostly places. They are the ultimate unfinished story, a puzzle where most of the pieces are missing, challenging our certainty about the past and our place within it. This is not the tidy narrative of a history book. It is a mystery that actively defies our understanding, forcing us to become participants in the search for answers. We are drawn to the sublime beauty found in their decay, that poignant mix of awe and melancholy we feel when gazing upon grandeur laid low by time. It is the emotional weight of a fallen column, the haunting grace of a doorway leading to empty sky. This feeling has a name: ruin value, the powerful aesthetic of decay. It compels us to contemplate the transience of all things, including our own bustling world. The crumbling stone asks a silent, unavoidable question. If an empire of such scale and ingenuity could vanish, what fate awaits our own glass and steel towers? Yet alongside this sobering thought comes a pure, childlike thrill. It is the same electric excitement of finding a hidden trail or uncovering a secret box in the attic, magnified to a colossal scale. The discovery of a lost city is the ultimate treasure hunt, a moment that connects us to the adventurers of old, reminding us that the world still holds wonders. This fascination is fundamentally human. It is an emotional bridge to the people who walked those streets, a way to feel the vast, flowing current of history and find our own small place within it. These empty ruins hold up a mirror across the centuries. They do not just ask what happened to them, they ask what will remain of us and what story our own civilization will one day tell. This drive to conquer the impossible is a thread that runs across the entire tapestry of human history. Far from the desert sands, other civilizations performed their own miracles of adaptation in equally formidable landscapes. High in the cloud-shrouded Andes, the Incas built Machu Picchu on a near-vertical mountain ridge, a city that seems to float between the peaks. They faced a completely different set of challenges, from torrential rains that could wash away soil to steep terrain that defied conventional farming. Their answer was a masterpiece of engineering, a system of intricate stone terracing that created flat, stable land for agriculture. These were not simple garden plots, they were complex structures with deep gravel layers for drainage, preventing the entire mountainside from collapsing during heavy storms. Just as the Nabateans mastered water capture, the Incas engineered a system of canals and fountains that channeled spring water across the entire citadel, providing a fresh, reliable supply to every sector. Machu Picchu was not just a city, it was a declaration of harmony with one of the most dramatic and difficult environments on Earth. On the other side of the world, in the dense, monsoonal jungles of Cambodia, another metropolis arose from an equally unlikely foundation. Angkor Wat is just the most famous temple in a sprawling urban complex that was once the largest pre-industrial city in the world. The Khmer Empire's genius lay in its command of water. In a landscape defined by a cycle of deluge and drought, they constructed a vast, intricate network of canals, reservoirs, and barrages, or massive artificial lakes. This hydraulic system did more than provide drinking water. It allowed them to grow enough rice to feed a population numbering in the hundreds of thousands. They transformed a volatile, seasonal environment into a regulated, productive machine. What do a desert caravan city, a mountain citadel, and a jungle capital have in common? All three were lost to the outside world for centuries, their grandeur fading into local legend until they were rediscovered by a wider, astonished world. Their locations were not arbitrary, they were strategic choices that offered defense, resources, or spiritual significance. Their existence defies the modern assumption that great cities must rise in naturally hospitable places. From the water-starved deserts to the rain-drenched jungles and the oxygen-thin mountains, human societies have repeatedly demonstrated a stunning capacity to reshape their world. This global pattern reveals something fundamental about our species. We are defined by a relentless ambition to imprint our presence on the most challenging canvases, to build centers of power, faith, and culture that seem to defy the very logic of nature. The story of the Desert Metropolises is not an isolated phenomenon, but a powerful chapter in this universal human saga of ambition, brilliant adaptation, and eventual surrender to the enduring power of the natural world. The next great desert metropolis is already out there, its outline waiting in data we have not yet learned to read. Our age of discovery has not ended, it has simply changed its tools. While the romantic image of the lone explorer has faded, the reality is more thrilling, a systematic, global search powered by satellites and algorithms. Enormous swaths of our planet, particularly within the vastness of the Sahara, the rugged emptiness of the Arabian Peninsula, and the sprawling silence of the Gobi Desert, have never felt the careful trowel of an archaeologist. These are not small patches of land, but entire nations of sand and rock that have never been surveyed with modern technology. Every year, new satellite data streams down, and with it, fresh anomalies. A faint geometric shadow in the Egyptian desert might hint at a fortress wall. An inexplicable soil discoloration in the Arabian empty quarter could trace the outline of a temple long since returned to dust. Each of these digital ghosts is a potential city, a story paused mid-sentence. Beyond the machines, the ancient texts themselves still hold unsolved riddles. Classical geographers wrote of prosperous cities along the southern Arabian frankincense trail, places that grew wealthy from the fragrant sap of trees. We know the names of some of these cities, yet their physical locations remain a blank on the map. They were not empires but crucial way stations, the smaller, vital organs of a vast trading body. This is a crucial point. The search is not only for the next Petra, but for the hundreds of smaller regional centers that supported the great powers. These towns, though less grand, hold the intimate details of daily life, the records of common people that history so often overlooks. As our technology grows more sensitive and access to these remote regions slowly improves, we are on the cusp of a new era. The coming decades will not be defined by a single, spectacular find, but by a steady, revelatory stream of discoveries. Each one will add another piece to the grand puzzle of our human past. The desert has not yet given up all its secrets. Somewhere beneath the shifting dunes, a forgotten city waits for its story to be told, for its silence to be broken after centuries of sleep. The ruins we thought we knew are beginning to speak in entirely new languages. A century-old excavation, once considered complete, is now a fresh crime scene for scientific inquiry. The true revolution in archaeology is not just where we dig, but how we see what we have already unearthed. Take the simple act of sifting through ancient soil, a task once done merely to clear space for grander structures. Today, that same soil is a time capsule. Scientists can now analyze microscopic particles of pollen called phytoliths, which are the durable skeletons of plants. These tiny, silent witnesses can tell us what crops were grown in a city's final years, providing a stark record of agricultural collapse. They can reveal the arrival of foreign plants, tracing the invisible routes of ancient trade. Even the chemical composition of the soil itself holds clues, showing where livestock were penned or where specific crafts like metalworking took place. This turns an empty plot of earth into a detailed map of daily life. The bones themselves are now archives. DNA analysis can uncover stories that no inscription ever recorded. Were the rulers of this desert metropolis a single, powerful dynasty, or was power shared among different families? Did the population spring from the local region, or was it a melting pot of migrants drawn by trade and opportunity? A single skeleton can reveal an individual's geographic origins, their diet, and even some of the diseases they faced. This transforms an anonymous burial into a personal biography, adding profound human depth to the stone and mortar. Old excavation notebooks and photographs, stored for decades in museum basements, are being reopened. Archaeologists are now cross-referencing these records with modern climate data or economic models, asking questions the original diggers never thought to pose. Why was this wealthy merchant's house built in this particular neighborhood? The answer might rewrite our understanding of the city's social classes. Why did the style of pottery suddenly change in this layer of the city? It could indicate a new trading partner or a wave of refugees. The past is not a closed book. It is a story we are only now learning how to read properly, with every scientific advance offering a new lens through which to view the evidence. The silent cities are no longer silent. They are whispering, and we are finally beginning to understand the words. The vanished metropolises of the desert stand as eternal monuments to both human ingenuity and our profound fragility. We see the ultimate expression of this duality in the water-harvesting genius of Petra and the subterranean canals of the Garamantes. Civilizations that proved human culture can bloom in the most defiant and unlikely places. They did not merely survive, they thrived, creating art, architecture, and complex societies against a backdrop of relentless sun and sand. Their triumphs are a powerful testament to the boundless potential of the human spirit when faced with seemingly impossible odds. Yet, the very silence that now surrounds their ruins speaks a different, more sobering truth. These stones whisper cautionary tales of resource depletion, of environments pushed beyond their limits, and of the profound vulnerability that comes when a society's prosperity is built upon a single, precarious pillar. Their golden ages were not ended by a single cataclysm, but by a slow unraveling, a cascade of interconnected failures that we are only now beginning to fully understand. They challenge us to learn not only from their brilliant adaptations but also from their ultimate collapse. In an era defined by our own global challenges, from climate shifts to resource anxiety, the lessons carried on the desert wind have never been more vital. These lost cities are not relics of a distant, irrelevant past. They are mirrors reflecting back the potential consequences of our own choices. Let their stories inspire you to look more closely at the foundations of our modern world, to question the sources of our own prosperity and the sustainability of our own paths. For history's greatest mysteries often hold the keys to our future, if we are only willing to listen. If these tales of impossible cities and the echoes they left behind have captivated you, consider subscribing for more journeys into the forgotten corners of our shared past. We would love to hear which lost civilization fascinates you most, so feel free to share your thoughts in the comments.